who's on the road?
We have Marlon Randa from Charles Executive.
Wezi Kaonga from UNFPA representing the country.
Muhammad Khaled, Embassy of Egypt.
Lamin Achari, Time of
Good afternoon. My name is Jenny Now. I'm the acting country director for this. Yes,
Good afternoon, again, the Visa Supply Logistics Manager of UNICEF.
Good afternoon, Abdulaziz Kubuni, I'm the country deputy secretary. Good afternoon, my name is David.
Good afternoon, I'm Mazan Habo from UNFPA.
Dr. Kalangwa.
Good afternoon, my name is ZAMMSA. Good afternoon, I'm Dr. Kalangwa Kalangwa, Assistant Director of Promotion of Ministry.
Good afternoon, I'm Lucas Silva from Land Department.
Good afternoon, Honorable Minister. I'm Jacqueline Stali, Head Communication. Good afternoon, Honorable Minister. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Honorable Minister. Good afternoon. I'm Hudson Mabeta, Member of Parliament for Kankoyo, and also member of the Parliamentary Committee on Health and Community Services. I also participated in the pre-shipping inspection for the first health center kits in being delivered by Mission Pharma, as well as the procurement of medicine in Egypt. So I've been heavily involved in these two transactions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sylvia Masebo, Member of Parliament for Chongwe and Minister of Health. Let me start by, first of all, coming to the Minister of Health. But most important, thank you that you were able to respond to this quick call at very short notice on a Friday, when I'm aware that normally you do your half days on Friday. On Friday for us, we have Parliament in the morning and the afternoon. So thank you very much. Basically, we called you for one issue, and this is the issue of ZAMMSA as our statutory body, which issue under ZAMMSA have to do basically with the procurement of drugs from Egypt, drugs which I'm sure you're following the media, trucks, 61 trucks were marooned at some warehouse. I thought I should update you as our close cooperating partners, development partners who have been supporting this ministry in the health sector, and also in particular also supporting us with commodities and ZAMMSA as an institution in terms of strengthening it. So I felt duty bound that it was necessary that we have this engagement so that I'm able to give you some information and also to give you an opportunity to ask questions so that you don't have to be reading things in the social media, because the social media today can confuse one person. So I thought maybe it was better. And so I'll start from just a short background so that I give you enough time to ask specific questions. And I think the first issue is to recall that in the year 2022, in fact 2022, we had a big problem of commodities in the country. If you recall, at that point, our stocks throughout the country were very, very low. And so at some point, government decided that in order for us to stabilize the commodities, we had to find a means and ways of getting at least maybe just one bulk purchase, which could then help ZAMMSA. And so myself as Minister of Health, speaking to the Minister of Health in Egypt, I met him in Egypt at a conference which was called for Ministers of Health. I was one of the many ministers that attended that particular conference. I personally myself approached the Minister of Health in Egypt to say, look, we have a situation in the country. Is it possible that you can help us as a country? Because I learned whilst in Egypt that Egypt was one of the few countries in Africa that had a manufacturing, quite a robust manufacturing industry in terms of drugs and medical supplies. And that they had over 400 various industrial companies that were producing various drugs and medical supplies. And he answered me that yes, they could be of help, except that as government, as Ministry of Health, they themselves do not procure the drugs. They have a similar situation like in Zambia, where they have an agency called United Procurement Agency, which is UPA, which actually is the one that is delegated by government or established by government to buy drugs in that country for the Egyptian public facilities or hospitals. And of course, when he said that, I was very happy with that, because I said, well, it's a similar situation in Zambia. The Ministry of Health does not directly procure. We've established a company called ZAMMSA, which is a statutory body, which has been mandated now to procure drugs for us, and also not only procuring, but also storing them and distributing them to the last mile. So with that conversation, the minister introduced me to the UPA with my Zambian delegation and the ambassador in Egypt. We had a good meeting with the UPA, and the UPA took us to some of the big companies in Egypt to show us the kind of industries that they had. And we went around quite a number, but of course, you know, we could not do more than 10 because they're huge. But we were satisfied. Personally, I was satisfied with my team that, yes, this was a country. We looked at the price list, and we also met I think another institution which is similar to ZAMMSA, the regulatory body there, and we were quite satisfied with what we saw, that, you know, we could get that support. And at that time, of course, because that was not specifically the issue we went there for, we went for this other conference for ministers. We didn't take long, and we left the country. When I came back, I reported my visit to Cabinet to encourage Cabinet that it was better that we help ZAMMSA by getting some drugs from there. Because I was also clear in my mind then as minister that you know, the continuous buying of local drugs from middlemen in the country was not going to help us. And I was also clear that at the time there were a lot of cartels that had been involved in this procurement of drugs in the previous administration, and of course they wanted to continue with what they were doing before. And of course it is clear that I was not going to go for the same arrangement. So government agreed that we do a government-to-government procurement. And so with that, we engaged UPA and through the ministry, through the embassy in Egypt, and of course the ambassador became a frequent visitor to my office on this arrangement to try and help. You appreciate one problem that we had in our interaction, that Egypt do not use English, and so we're back and forth with translations in English and from the Egyptian. But thanks to the Egyptian ambassador and his team, I think they were very, very helpful. They made things easier for us. And finally, after a battle, because even just to get that contract signed was not easy. There were all sorts of roadblocks. You could see that people did not want that particular deal. I was also clear in my mind that it was not a very attractive deal, because one, the drugs were good enough for us, too. The price was good, almost 150% lesser than what we're paying locally. And because they're within the continent, transportation wouldn't take so long. And so looking at the situation we're in at the time, it was felt this would really be a game changer for the country. And so finally that contract was signed, and of course government instructed ZAMMSA, being the procurement entity, to be the one to enter on behalf of government with the UPA, and also that the money was going to be sent to the UPA account, of course, because we had no way of sending money as Minister of Health to UPA. So that was done through ZAMMSA, because the drug fund, although it's being managed under Ministry of Health, the drug fund was being managed, of course, in terms of day-to-day by ZAMMSA. And so the deal was sealed. We were just now to wait for the goods. Unfortunately, there was some delays in the coming of the drugs. And so it took a bit of time than expected, but finally I'm informed that by December, January this year, there was some indication that they would be sending the drugs. And so the first containers arrived in the month of January. And I'm informed that the first containers that arrived were 16. And these 16 containers contained only IV fluids. You recall, colleagues, that January of 2024, we had a terrible cholera outbreak. And so it seems that ZAMMSA may have pressed for IV fluids to be the first ones to be shipped so that they could be used. Unfortunately, I don't know, but when they arrived, the first consignment, we are told, they went straight to ZAMMSA, because the payment to UPA Egypt was CIF Lusaka. And the value of that particular contract, the whole contract was for $24 million. Of course, it was 24.1, but so just $24 million. That was the value. And the first consignment that arrived, the 12 containers, went straight to ZAMMSA, as it should have been. No. The first consignment that came, I'm told, the first consignment was by air. And it came by air. I think these were drugs that were like desperate. And so these drugs were landed at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport. And they were picked from Kenneth Kaunda International Airport by ZAMMSA straight to the ZAMMSA warehouse. So there were no issues around the first consignment that came into the country. The second one is the one now which was consisting 16 containers. And it is this second one which came by road. Was it road or by sea via, of course, Mozambique. And I think along the way there were issues, but finally it landed in Zambia, and then of course to Lusaka. And in Lusaka, the trucks went straight to ZAMMSA. I'm not sure what happened, but they were not offloaded. The story around the non-offloading, as I heard it from officers there, was that they were also offloading other containers or other drugs, and they were busy or something like that. But somehow the trucker, whether informed by somebody or on their own accord, those are issues which are details, but ended up going away from ZAMMSA shed and went to a warehouse within Lusaka in Makeni named JJ Transporters Warehouse. So that is where the first 16, the second, to be the first container by sea, which was offloaded at the same place. But take note that the first time they arrived, they went straight to where they should have been. But then they were diverted somehow to go to a private warehouse. That is January, where in that COVID era, nobody, told us anything about having, stores, because they would have been happy to receive them and, to use them. Interestingly, even with those Ivory fluids being in Zambia at a known place, ZAMMSA went ahead to buy more IV fluids locally for distribution and also for use within Lusaka. Around March, I'm told, April, some more trucks came, which is called the second truck by sea. And this one went straight to ZAMMSA warehouse, and correctly so. And when it went to ZAMMSA, ZAMMSA received those containers, except they only offloaded a particular number. What was the number? 12? 12 containers were offloaded, but 7 remained. And these 7 were diverted again to the very site called JJ Warehouse site. As to who gave that instruction and as to why, those are details, but those are facts. That the second or third consignment, which had now they had essential medicines. So those drugs were offloaded. Only 7 containers, 12 containers were offloaded. The 7 were sent to another location, the same JJ location. Again, last month, June, another consignment which was 38 containers, which is now the last one so far that has arrived. Not really the last one, but last in that there's no more that has come, although I'm informed that there are about 108 containers total altogether. But this consignment was 38 containers that came. But this one did not go to ZAMMSA warehouse. From whichever border they came through, they went straight to the same site, J and J. And so, we are now talking about a total of 74 containers that had come or arrived in the country, and of which 61 were the ones marooned at J and J. The rest offloaded directly at ZAMMSA out of the 74 containers. So fast forward, you will appreciate that ZAMMSA has a full management in place. ZAMMSA has a full board in place. ZAMMSA has the Ministry of Health in place. ZAMMSA has donors they work with every day. And ZAMMSA has many other partners that work with them. Maybe others knew, but unfortunately, I knew that we were getting drugs. As to when they were coming and the details, I didn't know. I also knew that others were coming by ship and they had already come and were distributed, because you will recall that even when these drugs came, the first one through the airport, I was not there myself. It was the board chair, the good news that they went to do the launch. I was not invited to be the one to launch them because it's not my job. They have a board, it was all good. When the other ones came, or there were all these things, I had no idea about the real dates and things like that. And take note that Egypt was giving advance notice of what was going to come. So I hear that it's not like the goods just arrived at the border or anywhere. No, they knew, they had the schedule, they had the dates, as normally is the case that, you know, suppliers will tell you expect your goods in the month of May on this date, or, you know, if they are wrong, it will be 1 day over or 1 day. So everybody knew that. But somehow, maybe because I was busy with COVID in the first 3 months, and maybe also because in the month of June, I was in the hospital for almost 14 days and I was at home another 14 days. I can simply say that the whole month of June, I was actually a patient, except July when I started. When I came back for work, July, I was told that ZAMMSA came to me and said they needed more resources because the amount of drugs they are getting in the country, apart from the Egyptian drugs, they also have center kits coming into the country under Mission Pharma. And all these things are arriving almost at the same time. And they submitted that they needed support. And the support they needed was operational funds. At that point, I actually personally, when I heard that they had those problems operational, they needed money, I called for a meeting myself, which I chaired here, of the management here, and the manager of ZAMMSA and the ministry officials, those that are responsible for the pharmaceutical department, to try and just understand, you know, because we have a budget, and why should ZAMMSA now say they don't have resources? We budgeted, why? What is the issue? Of course, I found a few things in my interaction that they had come up with a bigger structure, and the salary scales had gone up, and so now they were even having challenges to meet that wage budget. And I did put it across to ZAMMSA that a budget was not approved, or they say it was approved by the board. I said yes. Even if the board approved, there are certain issues that have an impact on the budget, government budget. You have to ensure that you get approval from the ministry, because then we also have to get approval from Ministry of Finance, because we're supposed to work within our budget. And so I was not satisfied with the presentation on that day, and I then instructed PS next to me to find out exactly, because they also said, look, we have drugs, we cannot distribute them, so we need the support for the last mile. And I said, well, that is a point, but we have the vehicles are still here, we are trying to fight to get them registered, and you know, so once we get these vehicles, we'll give them to you. But they were not coming out straight, and their presentation was not satisfactory to me. And so I told them, go back, I want to understand your structure, the salary structure, where the money is going, and also the issue of, you know, and this time we're not talking about the drug fund, because the drug fund should be for the drug fund. But it was during this meeting in the month of July, early this June, and towards the end of June, when I was told, when they made their submission, that they also had problems of paying salaries, and that they had to get some money from the drug fund to pay the salaries. And at that stage, of course, my head went. I said, you did not get authority to get money to, you know, to change the expenditure use for that particular head, because drug fund is drug fund. And I made it clear that the drug fund is not only government resources. The drug fund consists of government money, it will consist of NEMA, it was supposed to consist of donors, and therefore that should be ring-fenced. And that's why, even in the Act, that drug fund is supposed to be under Ministry of Health. But I gave the authority for them as management and their board to run it, of course, to run it in an effective way and in a correct way. Now that they had made that mistake of using the money to pay salaries for 2 months, then they said, no, we have retained that money, because the money, we're expecting money, operations money from Ministry of Finance, and therefore that's why we had to fall back. We did not want an internal, you know, unrest among the workers. We're very sure that we're going to retain the money. I said, good, if you have retained the money, good for me, but from this day, I'm writing to you and your board to inform them that I'm withdrawing that delegated authority for you to run the account alone, in particular the drug fund. So I told PS administration to write to them to indicate that the minister had withdrawn that, and that going forward, that particular account will have to be co-managed. They can make the decisions, but they, and sign on a check, but there should be one more signature from the Ministry of Health by the permanent in charge of administration. So that letter went in the month, towards the month, end of June. And so I then turned to him to say, can you sit down with them? We've already agreed they must give us proper funds. So they went. I think I traveled to the Copper Belt, and PS said he had a meeting with them, and he said when they came back with another presentation, PS gave them what he called a template of how they must come with their story, and at that stage, because when DG said they needed money for last mile, PS in charge of donor coordination was able to tell us to say, no, but you can't say you need money 100%, for example, for last mile distribution, because 70% is under the US and also CHAS. As ZAMMSA, you only have 30%. So let's talk about the 30%. Don't make it look like it's 100%. So there were all these nitty-gritties which needed to be put out correctly. And I think he gave them a template on which they should follow, so that when he's satisfied as PS, then he can bring it to me to make that presentation. So when I came back from the Copper Belt, I asked him, are we ready for the next meeting with the ZAMMSA round? He said to me, well, the presentation was too poor, I still guided them, and I think that they'll come through. But he said to me, there seems to be some lies, they're not coming out. And even at that point, he did not tell me anything about any containers that are in the country. No. What we knew even at that point was simply that there are trucks coming now, supposed to be coming from Egypt. He did not say to him or to me or to anybody in this ministry that here's the bill that we need, we have containers in country. That story was not there. For me, it was a general story of, our budget is not sufficient. But when I came back and he gave me the story, I then wrote to PS administration. I said, listen, in one of the presentations, they said, all we need, minister, is instead of Ministry of Finance giving us monthly allocation, we want the whole resource for the next 6 months to December. But then we'll know what to do with the money ourselves. At that stage, I said to PS admin, can you write to Minister of Finance for authority for them to release the operational fund from July to December? So when I came back, I saw it was quiet. I said, what has happened? Have these people been given the money? Because I heard they were still wanting to see me. Do they still have the problem? He said, no. Minister of Finance agreed to give them the whole money. And now we're in July. So the money that has been given for them is July up to December. I said, okay, so at least there won't be any noise. They're okay. Yes, Minister, they're okay. I said, fine. Then they came back to me. They were pushing for now the next meeting where they should have, I said, have you concluded? They said, yes, they fixed it a day for me. Now, a day before that meeting, some of the officers from there came with a paper, and in the paper, it was written that, trucks marooned for 6 days, so much money. Clearing agent, 145. Demurrages charges, 8.9 million. Minister, we need this money. It was that I said, money for what again? I thought you were given only 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago by finance all your money for up to December. So what do you need the money for? No, there are some goods that are marooned at the border. And these goods, if we don't pay the money, then they'll not come in, and that every day each container is going to be charged $500. I said, what? At that stage, I said to DG, call your entire management to come here. And I called for a meeting. I said, can I get this story, correctly? And it was in that discussion now when we started hearing about, some goods came in January. But in fact, they didn't say January, they just said, we received some containers last month in June, but these goods arrived at the border, and when they arrived at the border, we're not able to clear 145,000 kwacha, which the clearing agents wanted us to have. And because of that, the truck stayed for some weeks. And because they stayed for some weeks, we attracted damages, and now that is the money that is wanted. So where are these same goods? Are they at the border, or you've received the goods? They said yes, the goods. Some of them are at the border, some of them they're at ZAMMSA, some of them are at a shed. Which shed? They said to me, no, the agents, the clearing agents, are the ones that are holding the goods. Of course, at that stage, first of all, I said, this amount of money, government will not pay. You will pay for this money. That's one. Two, I immediately picked up the phone. I called the police to come, because they were pointing fingers at each other when I was now trying to probe them. And I could see that I was not going to get anywhere with the matter, and the matter had become complicated for me at my level to handle. Yeah, because when they talk about now, you know, they first talked about marooned trucks at, they said Bera, no, Chirundu.
Yeah,
Chirundu. At the border. Then I told him, can you phone the ZRA Director General? He called him. I said, I hear we've got a truck that has been, you know, marooned there for some days. And the story now, there was a story of the PIN for Ministry of Health has been blocked. And I was saying to him, how can you block a PIN? You know? So when these vehicles, even for some of the private suppliers, get to the border, this PIN is blocked, and I don't know what that was all about. But we spoke to him, and then he said, came back and said, there's no track for Ministry of for ZAMMSA there. The track they're talking about, I'm told, could be in Beira. Yeah. So I said, well, a track that is in Beira, we have no business with a track that is in Beira. We only have business with trucks that must arrive CIF to SAC. So the police came, and they started asking questions. And when they saw that the questions were not, the police said to me, Minister, this is not just negligence, there's more to this issue. Allow us to go with these people to the police for questioning. So I said, well, before we talk about questioning, I'm interested in where the drugs are, so maybe you can help me, I'll come with you. So that's how I went to the police, and one gentleman from one of the agents said he knew where this place was. So with the police and those people, we went to this place because it was already getting late. It was 18 hours. And that's how we went to this place in Makeni, and for sure we found containers in a yard. And the police of course asked them to open and asked the secretary to call the owner. And the owner was not a problem, he came. This guy came and said, well, I have these goods. I said, do you know these are drugs? He said, well, we're waiting for the owners to collect them. I said, well, these belong to the government, so I've come to collect them. And whether we are owed money, you have no right under the laws of this government for you to hoard drugs. Then he said to me, oh, well, you can take them even now. We're waiting for someone to come and claim them. I said, what about the bill that you sent? He said, well, that bill, somebody from ZAMMSA came to ask us to give them a bill. But we have no contract with ZAMMSA because us we're just transporters. So there's another freight company that was engaged by the buyer from the Egyptian side. So I think those are the ones that should have. But normally when they have problems, they bring their trucks, their containers here. So we think it was in that regard. So at that stage, we left the police there and said we'll come the following day to collect the containers. The following day, of course, the matter was reported to government, and ZNS was tasked to come and help to get the goods from there and take them to ZAMMSA. And that process has been ongoing. Of course, because there's 61 containers, they have to be taken from there using a crane, put them on the truck, bring them to ZAMMSA, and at ZAMMSA remove them, and then the ZAMMSA staff now unpacking them from the containers and putting them into the warehouse according to the way they do everything. So obviously that will take another 1 week to complete. Now, fast forward, what are the issues? And why was it necessary for me to speak to you? One, because the Zambian drug supply is, of course, a joint activity. You yourselves are partners and you support us heavily, and we thank you for that. And so it was necessary for us to give you this report. Suffice to say that the details of this report is now under investigation to get the jigsaw, who did what, who did there, what went wrong, and so that will come later. once the police finish their investigations, the police are saying they are almost concluding, and they'll be able to make a public statement, as to what they have found. Now, there are two things now that I wanted you to work with us as government to address. One, it is the efficacy of the drugs now that we have in the country. Remember that you have the first consignment that came in January of the fluids. Then you have another consignment of drugs that came around March, April, which most was left at ZAMMSA and maybe even distributed those to, and about 7 trucks went back. And then you have the latest one which came in the last 2-3 weeks, which is the 38 trucks, and these are medicines. You will note that there's a big cry out there to insinuate that the drugs have expired, or the drugs that were bought were expired and they should not be distributed. Personally, where I sit here, I understand where that call is coming from. That is a call coming from local suppliers that personally I have reason to believe would have been part and parcel of this scam, through some of our officers, even junior officers at ZAMMSA. I think the idea basically is to ensure that Zambia does not stabilize the drug supply chain. And if that does not happen, then we can continuously buy local at high price, with money changing under the table, because that's how it has always been. To have a seamless way of supply chain will not be desirable for some of our local suppliers, especially some of those that have been in this game for a very long time. And so I see sabotage personally in this whole scheme, as sabotage to ensure that these drugs should never have seen the light of the day, so that they can continue, because there's this 4.6 billion in the drug fund, which they must go to them. I say this because it has also come to our attention that some of these suppliers, even with what we had, ZAMMSA is sitting on IV fluids that are going to last us for 3 years. So you can understand, So we are buying drugs, we are buying drugs and IV fluids in particular that will last us for 3 years, and that will end up even expiring on us. When you have IV fluids that you brought in yourself and paid already full, you ignore them. Secondly, apart from buying IV fluids from some 3 companies, local companies here, so you don't be surprised when they start throwing mud at each other. This one paid that one, this one paid that one. I can tell you myself that even the ones they're mentioning now may not even be the others they are doing that. I know that myself. So this is the drug cartel. That's how they've always worked. They'll destroy each other. They'll ensure they corrupt senior government officials, they'll corrupt ministers, so that things go well. And when anybody tries to fight to stop that, they'll fight. So I thought you should be ready for a lot of big fight that will come out in the social media. But what is important is for you to understand that the police, and not just the Zambia police, the DEC, the ACC, they've combined. They're working together to ensure that they comb this issue. And of course, you understand the president. The president will not cover anybody. He has publicly told all of us, cabinet, that anybody who does anything, you're on your own. So there's no shielding of anybody here, whether minister or PS or director or anything. I want you to help government in the area of ensuring the efficacy of those drugs, because if we do it alone as government under Ministry of Health, and the agency mandated, which is ZAMMSA, the regulatory authority that is mandated to verify, they will turn around and say it is fake. So I would like you as partners to help government in that regard so that we reduce unnecessary waste, you know, even for the drugs that came in last month. And take note that there are more drugs coming because the total number is 108 containers, and so far only 74 have arrived. I'm told that the others should be arriving in the next 3 weeks or so, which gives us room to get ready to receive those others. And therefore, I don't want people also to confuse the 74 plus the ones that will come back. I'm informed that 2 weeks ago, ZAMMSA was trying, in fact, to buy more drugs locally here. Same drugs that are in the containers. So don't be surprised when you see some suppliers saying, these drugs are bad, they're rotten, they're this, they're that, because these are the ones who are supposed now to supply theirs. It's not in their interest. If those drugs are okay and they're distributed, it's not in their interest because then they will have no market for their drugs. And those drugs from Egypt are supposed to last us from June to December. So it means from now to December, they have no business. And then on top of that, the other drugs next week also from Mission Pharma, the kits are also coming. This is almost the second last. There will be one more consignment coming also from the Mission Pharma. Meaning that even as we are quite stable in the country, we'll even be more stable, at least for the rest of the year. So really, if we are to be prudent, the government of Zambia should not be spending money on drugs that have already been paid for. They should be spending money on any other drugs that are not available. Because of course, we will not be at 100% or 99% in terms of the categories of the categories of drugs that we still need. The second issue that I would like support from you is capacity building at ZAMMSA, especially at this critical time. In particular, in the department that does the supply chain. That's called supply chain department. The quantifying and the supply chain. And the second department, critical, is the warehousing, the ones that now do the storage, warehousing, and also distribution to the last mile. Lastly, of course, as government, the president has already directed that we should have a forensic audit of ZAMMSA, but I want to also see how you can support us, because I know that you are in that sector or supply, and you may have tools on how you can effectively do a proper forensic audit. So I think that is another area of capacity where we would like some support. And of course, lastly and most importantly, for your continued support and confidence in this administration, especially when it comes to issues of corruption. That's this administration, and in particular the president. We are very clear as a government on the negative impact that corruption brings. Today, Zambia is able to offer free education because of the president ensuring that resources are used in a prudent manner. And so I just wanted to get your confidence in the government, most importantly, and the system, that really we mean good for the people of Zambia, and we mean well for you, our partners, and we appreciate the support you're giving us. We don't take it for granted, and would not be that irresponsible. But this is exactly what transpired. For now, the details will have to come from the police. I did have an opportunity. I must state that some of the weaknesses in ZAMMSA is the composition of the board. As you are aware, the board has 7 members. Of the 7 members, they are as follows. 1, Minister of Health. We have a representative from the Ministry of Health, who in this regard is our Director of Clinical Care, who is in charge of the pharmaceutical subsector. Then Ministry of Finance, they have a director there from Ministry of Finance. I think she's one of the directors, one of the brilliant directors there in the Ministry of Finance and State. And then thirdly, we have somebody again from Ministry of Justice, again one of the best directors there in charge of agreements, contracts, and brilliant young lady as well from Ministry of Justice under the Attorney General's office, chambers. Then the fourth member is we have, as per the Constitution, it says a representative of the Pharmaceutical Society of Zambia. And so we have the president elected by his colleagues, chosen by them and endorsed by the minister and cabinet as a member of the board. That's the fourth person. The fifth member is from the civil society. And the civil society in this regard, we are represented by Charles. And we have the Director General herself. You know her, you are very familiar with her and you work very well with her, Madam Sichinga. And of course, we have another organization called the Professional Health, which is HPCZ, Health Professionals Council of Zambia. And again, we have one of the top directors from there. So the minister has to appoint one individual who has to be the chair. And so this individual has to be from outside. This is the only person really whom you can say, we have the liberty or the leeway to really decide. As minister, I had the liberty to decide and take that name to be cleared. And this is the former director, the former, what was she, former Auditor General, Madam Chifungula, Anna Chifungula. I must also state that she's not present. She's been sick for some time. And so one of the board members representing the ministry is the one who is acting in her place while she's been out. She's been indisposed. So that is the board. And this board is part-time. So you can also appreciate what that kind of arrangement has for an institution like ZAMMSA, critical institution like ZAMMSA. And of course, the board is the one that is supposed to manage ZAMMSA on a day-to-day basis. I phoned the board chair myself the day actually when everything started. I didn't even bother to phone her because I knew she was in hospital. But the day before I took the statement, I sent the statement to her and a text message to inform her that, look, I know you're sick, I don't want to disturb you, but I thought you should understand what's happening. And I sent her the note, and also just to find out whether you were aware as chairperson of the board. And her response to me was that she's shocked. And she said, I'm wondering where I am here in bed as to why we were mopping up, buying local things in the month of December, December last year to January, February, March, when in fact we had things right here in Zambia. She said, I was not aware. I was only aware that these goods were still on the Egyptian side through Beira, and they were still having their own issues. And so we were waiting for these people, things to reach Zambia. So with that, I then came to understand that we have a bigger problem. And so I thought I just add this bit. The current board has had 3 meetings since this matter happened. And of course, they have suspended the DG. They've charged him according to the contract. They have a contract between DG and the board. So the board, I think, using the processes, have indeed engaged the chief executive, and they charged him accordingly. And they gave him, of course, an opportunity to exculpate themselves. And of course, they are also looking at some of the directors because there are some indications, of course, that there were some. For example, I'll tell you something that we came across a report where, for example, somebody said there was advice that we have enough stock, which is here, but somebody overruled and still went ahead to buy without really caring for making sure they take that which they already have. So there are a lot of other things coming up from there. And what we've done is, as a ministry, working with the board, is to say, since the process is still ongoing in terms of the disciplinary arraignment. Of course, we need somebody at least to stand into that office administratively, at least for a month. And then, of course, we've gotten somebody within the government circles, in particular the ministry. And we are still studying the matter in that regard. So that is the issue, and that is the story, and that is our appeal to you. So thank you very much that you could come at this short notice, and for your attention. So I'll open it for questions or clarifications, and anything that you want to say. Thank you. Yes, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. In fact, I would like to thank you for this comprehensive briefing on the details of the drug deal between Egypt and Zambia. And in fact, I would like to make this intervention in order to add few things, and also to present to you and to the public the current situation concerning this drug deal. And first of all, I feel obliged to make something like a testimony concerning the approach or the way that this matter has been dealt with from the very beginning by the Honorable Minister. I have told Her Excellency several times since we started our communication concerning this matter back in October 2021. Her Excellency was very, I would say, meticulous concerning every single detail of this deal, and she made it clear from the very beginning that her aim was actually to implement what was discussed between our two presidents earlier, right after President Hichilema's election in August 2021, that we would like to make to provide affordable medicine to the Zambian people, medicine at affordable prices. And from October till June, when Her Excellency had the chance to travel to Egypt to participate in this international conference that she mentioned earlier, we were discussing details concerning how to make this deal in total conformity with the Zambian decrees and legislations. And after Her Excellency's travel to Egypt in June, where she had the chance to meet the Egyptian Minister of Health and the Egyptian officials in the various governmental agencies in charge of production and manufacturing of medicine, we spent almost an additional year discussing all the details of the contract, the pricing, and all the relevant details to this deal. And again, one of the things that were, the thing that was actually directing us was the guidance that we had from the minister, that we would like to avoid any corrupt practices in the conclusion of this deal. And to be honest, for quite a long period of time, this deal was subject of false accusations from various pressure groups here in Zambia. Sometimes they were mentioning that, or they were saying that the Egyptian medicine is not up to the standards or the levels that make them acceptable here. And the minister dispatched a delegation representing ZAMMSA, which is the regulatory body, in order to make a thorough inspection and to make field visits to the Egyptian factories working in the field of medicine, and they came up with very positive reports. And later on, the accusations were that the Ministry of Health here was single sourcing one private Egyptian company, which was not the case because from the very beginning the agreement between the two sides was to provide, to have this deal under an MOU which was signed in 2017 between the two governments, and that it has to be a government-to-government agreement. And at a later stage, we concluded the deal actually in September 2023, and I beg to differ with what Her Excellency has mentioned, that the first batch actually arrived by air in October 2023, and the second one was the one that was that arrived here in Zambia in January 2024. Since that time, we have been, or the Egyptian side actually has been dealing directly with ZAMMSA officials, and the cooperation was constructive, I have to say, but there were some things that raised question marks or exclamation marks from our side. For example, the Egyptian side used to request from ZAMMSA officials what is called the certificate of acceptance, of final acceptance. After receiving each batch of these drug shipments, but we have never received anything from the Zambian side, and this is something important that we were that has to be done in order to make a full documentation of the shipment. Concerning the delay matter that Her Excellency the Minister has raised, in May 2024, a letter was sent to the Director General of ZAMMSA explaining that the reason for these delays were actually force majeure, because as you all know, in the 7th of October 2023, a military conflict has erupted in Gaza, and later on there were military strikes by the Houthis in Yemen on the vessels in the Red Sea and in the Indian Ocean, which actually has abrupted the international maritime flow of shipments of ships in this area. So this is something which was out of the hands of the Egyptian and the Zambian side, and an agreement was reached by the two sides to extend the period of the full implementation of this contract till the end of 2025 due to this specific reason. So, in a nutshell, it's something that I wanted to mention because, as I mentioned, since the first time I have met Her Excellency, which was almost 3 years ago, I found that she was very determined to fight corruption in the Ministry of Health. She was determined to end a vicious circle which included a number of local suppliers of other officials who have benefited for decades from the current from this situation at the expense of the Zambian people. And to be honest, the agreement that was reached between the two sides under Her Excellency's guidance was a very favorable one, and one of the things that made her and made ourselves very happy is that we, compared to the previous prices that the drugs were purchased at by the Zambian authorities, these were much larger quantities at much lesser prices, which is, I think, the duty of every official anywhere to fulfill his obligations to his people the same way as Her Excellency has implemented or fulfilled her duties and obligations. So this is what I wanted to mention, and of course, if there is any other details that are required by any of the participants, I would be very happy to reply to any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. I take those corrections of the first one, consignment having arrived last year through air in October. I also take note of your second correction in terms of the dates. So there was the January one, and I think you talked about the second one. And I think the second one was correct. You said
Yes.
the second one was by sea, which I thought I also mentioned, except of course on the dates. So the first consignment, which was in October, that's the one which came by sea, which went straight to ZAMMSA. And I think there was no issue there because that was distributed. I think everything started when we now started getting containers by sea, from what I gather. And I think we are right to say the first consignment by sea arrived in January.
Yes, 23rd of January.
So 23rd of January is the date. Okay. So it was 23rd of January when these were the IV fluids. So that is the story. Like I said, we'll continue refining the story. And of course, with the police investigations, we will be able also to know exactly, and also as they open the containers. But I'm told by my officials that every container, the agreement was every container must have a seal as they had agreed in Egypt. And if there's any container which is tampered, it was agreed with the people that were holding that the ministry will, ZAMMSA will reject that. But so far, I'm told that they are the correct.
I checked yesterday.
And the Honourable Member of Parliament, because you must take note that in trying to be as transparent as possible, every time we have that huge consignment for Egypt, and when we have that consignment for the Mission Farm, we got two MPs, one from the opposition and one from the ruling, to travel in the team that goes, and what they call the pre-inspection. So he's one of those who traveled, and we were trying to get more information from him, and so I thought it would be of help is the people that travel. Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, and I think for us it's just extending a word of gratitude that you could call at short notice to the partners, and basically to my colleagues to thank them, because there's a lot of information in the media, and if it's left without clarification, to be subject to other interpretation. And specifically, we take note of your asks, I think, in terms of determining the efficacy of the commodities that have been received, but also an important area of capacity building. And we enumerated the areas that need attention. And within the donor group, there are colleagues that have certain competences within those areas. But suffice to say that I think we'll get in touch with the PAs for details in terms of the scope that needs to be covered, in terms of what you have requested. And I think lastly, it's the issue that we appreciate that this whole issue has been taken up with the security agencies. I think it would be better and very helpful after the due conclusion that the experiences and the outcome be shared, so that it informs steps that should be implemented to improve, one, the control environment, and maybe certain procedures that should be followed in order not to have a repeat of basically what has happened. And maybe my colleagues could have further comments and maybe even clarification that may be needed at this stage. But thank you very much for this gesture, and as cooperating partners, we appreciate the flow of information, and very timely so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Honorable Minister, thank you so much for calling us. We obviously have been seeing the things in the news and social media, so I greatly appreciate. It doesn't matter if it's short notice. We're on 24/7, so really grateful that we were able to. You were able to call us and we could come. Simply want to echo and reinforce my colleagues from the World Bank's comment around obviously the considerable interest from the development partners and health cooperating partners in particular on commodities that come into the country either from donation or through your procurements and the supports that I think we've collectively worked on with the government in terms of capacity over the years. So appreciate your commitment to following through on forensic audits and bringing in certainly the right groups who can actually implement that to be able to reinforce and build that confidence that is needed, and also making sure that fundamentally the products that come in are good quality, low cost, and get to the people they need to get to in the right time. So looking forward to working more with you on this. I think it's sort of out of our breadth, I think, when it gets to a law enforcement side, and that obviously requires bringing in, as you mentioned, DEC or ZPS and others who have those capacities and strengths to be able to carry that out and to do it in a timely fashion so that it doesn't undermine all the work that we're collectively doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much. Just to reiterate what everybody else has said, Dora, and yes, and MP and everybody else. I think for us, what would be helpful, we have there's been discussions around establishing a steering committee or re-establishing or reinvigorating a kind of supply chain, procurement and supply chain technical working group for some time. I know TORs have been drafted and circulated with the idea of systematizing partner support. Because this is, the asks here are the asks today, but you know, new things will emerge. Historical things need to be addressed, and it would really help partners to not duplicate, but to really reinforce and have more consistent ongoing support that will really meaningfully bear fruit. So I know this has been, I think, proposed since late 2022. I've not heard since of any traction on that idea, but I think that kind of mechanism would be quite, and not with a whole, crowded room, but partners who are meaningfully engaged in procurement and supply chain with the expertise, sitting around a table and supporting ZAMMSA in a consistent way, and providing technical support in a consistent way as well, not ad hoc, fragmented, piecemeal support.